Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said it like she was setting a meeting reminder. No intimacy until I'm in the mood. Then she went back to scrolling her iPhone, checking emails about her startup. I looked at her for a second, then said quietly, "No rent until I'm inspired to pay." Her face went blank. That was the first real silence in months. She thought she'd won something. She smiled that business smile, the one she used on clients and investors, and told me not to be dramatic. I didn't answer. I just watched the reflection of her laptop light flicker across the coffee mug from Duncan. It was 8:37 p.m., the same time she usually texted her investor about strategy. They called him the closer, a man who could make a deal happen over a glass of wine. I'd seen his name flash on her screen more than once. She said it was just business. But business doesn't make you come home smelling like cologne that costs more than your car insurance. That night, she talked about the next round of funding like it was salvation. "If we land this," she said, "everything changes." I just nodded. She didn't notice I'd stopped listening weeks ago. Later, when she fell asleep with her laptop still open to a spreadsheet, I walked into the kitchen. On the fridge was a grocery list: Sam's Club, paper towels, coffee pods, frozen meals. The kind of list you make when you think life will just continue. I opened my laptop, checked our lease, and turned off the automatic rent payments. One click. No noise. No fight. Just silence. In the next room, Disney Plus played some cheerful movie we weren't watching. She'd left it running for background comfort. I stood there in the dark, listening to the laughter from the screen and realizing I didn't feel anything at all. By morning, I'd already decided I wasn't going to argue. I was going to vanish. The next morning, the apartment felt too clean. She was already dressed, phone in hand, talking fast. Her tone was sugar over steel. I heard her say the investor's name again, laughing the kind of laugh you use when you want someone to believe they're winning. She grabbed her Dunkin' cup, keys, and said she had a breakfast meeting. She didn't even look back. I opened my laptop, checked the utilities, and switched everything to manual payments: electricity, internet, water. The same quiet precision I used at work as a system admin. My job was to keep networks running so no one ever thought about them. Invisible stability. That's what I'd been to her too. Infrastructure. I watched the clock hit 9. She'd be sitting across from him now, probably at some hotel restaurant with white tablecloths and too much confidence. She'd be leaning forward, talking about scaling, about vision. I could almost see the way he'd look at her, not as a partner, but as a transaction. That's what power looks like when it's dressed as opportunity. By noon, I'd packed what mattered: clothes, my MacBook, external drives, and a toothbrush. I didn't rush. Every step was calm. My Tesla charged quietly in the garage, ready for the road. She'd think I was at work. She'd think everything was fine. I left my wedding ring on the counter beside her planner. The same planner she used to track investor calls and deadlines. One symbol of commitment next to another kind of contract. Before I closed the door, I looked once more at the living room. The Lowe's paint samples she'd taped to the wall, the half-finished idea of a new color, a new life. She wanted a renovation. I was just removing the foundation. When the door clicked behind me, it didn't sound like leaving. It sounded like turning off a system. By the time she came back that night, I was already gone. My clothes, laptop, and toothbrush, everything that made me visible, were out of the apartment. She probably didn't notice right away. That was always her strength, or maybe her weakness. She only noticed absence when it started to cost her something. I imagined the moment she realized the rent hadn't gone through. She'd check her banking app, frown, and assume it was a glitch. Maybe she'd text me about it, but my phone was already off. She'd call the landlord next, pretending to sound calm, but her voice would tighten when he said the payment system had been switched to manual. No mistakes, just intent. That's the difference between emotion and precision. She reacted. I planned. I spent that first night in a cheap roadside motel halfway between cities, eating a Taco Bell burrito and watching static on a broken TV. It wasn't comfort, it was clarity. The kind of quiet where every sound means something. The hum of the air conditioner, the crunch of paper wrappers, the weight of knowing no one was waiting for me. Back at the apartment, I knew Disney Plus was still running, some bright cartoon laughing into an empty room. That image stayed in my mind, the screen glowing, her reflection alone in the light of something cheerful she no longer felt. She tried calling, then texting, then blaming the investor for confusing her focus. She'd think she could fix this like a business problem: negotiations, deadlines, leverage. But this wasn't business. This was the system shutting itself down. And the most dangerous thing about silence isn't that it hides anger. It's that it announces control. 2 days later, I watched her through a hotel lobby window. She didn't see me, of course. She was sitting across from him, the investor, perfectly composed, in her favorite white blazer, the one she wore when she wanted to look untouchable. They were laughing, leaning close, his hand brushing hers casually, like he already owned the outcome. To anyone watching, it looked like confidence. But I could see the tension behind her smile. She was performing stability while everything underneath was collapsing. I'd been staying in a small Airbnb outside the city, working remotely. The same precision I used at the office now guided every move. I'd routed my emails through backups, disconnected shared accounts, and shifted my direct deposits. One by one, I was deleting traces of myself from her world. That night, I drove past our old apartment. Her car was still in the driveway, lights on, Disney Plus flickering through the curtains again. Maybe she left it running for comfort, or maybe she didn't want to face the silence. Inside, I knew she'd check her phone again and again, scrolling through old messages that didn't have answers. She would tell her friends I was taking space. She'd say it like it was mutual, like she understood. But the truth was, she never saw it coming. I didn't vanish out of anger. I just stopped being useful. That's the kind of disappearance that unnerves people. It doesn't explode. It dissolves. While she sipped her wine with the investor, I was miles away, sitting in my car, the Tesla silent under the streetlight. Watching her laugh, I realized something simple. She'd traded loyalty for acceleration. And she was about to learn what happens when the current stops flowing. The investor's empire wasn't built on trust. It was built on control. And like any system built that way, it had weak points. The kind of things most people ignore until someone quietly flips the right switch. I didn't have to dig far. His company's cloud network used the same security vendor I managed for a previous client. Old credentials, outdated encryption, lazy oversight. For a man who prided himself on buying loyalty, he'd underestimated how easily silence can become strategy. I didn't hack anything. I didn't leak files. I just redirected an internal audit request to the right inbox. A few questions about missing disclosures, a few numbers that didn't add up. That was all it took. Within a week, his investors were asking why certain contracts looked too familiar, why new projects matched proposals he'd already funded under other names. It wasn't destruction. It was exposure. While he scrambled to contain it, I drove. Long stretches of highway, no music, just the hum of the tires and the soft glow of the dashboard. I stopped at a Taco Bell off Route 64, ordered black coffee and a burrito, and watched the night move past. There's a strange peace in watching chaos unfold without touching it. She must have heard the rumors first, that her investor was being reviewed. She'd call him, he'd deflect, and for the first time, she'd feel that same silence she'd once given me. That quiet where answers should be. I wasn't coming back. I didn't need to. Systems collapse from within when you simply stop feeding them. And she'd built her whole identity on borrowed energy. Mine, his, anyone's who'd give her a shortcut. Now the current was gone, and she was about to realize how cold success feels when the lights go out. It started quietly, like a background process eating through memory. A week after the audit, she posted a photo on LinkedIn, some recycled quote about resilience. The kind of thing people post when they're trying to convince themselves they're still in control. But underneath, the comments had changed. No congratulations, no praise, just polite distance. The investor's name wasn't being tagged anymore. It was as if the algorithm itself had started erasing him. Her calls went unanswered. Meetings rescheduled. Her team at the startup suddenly reassessing priorities. People could feel it, even if they didn't say it out loud, the tension of someone who built too close to the fire. She would still walk into rooms with that confident stride, Starbucks in hand, pretending the noise didn't touch her. But the silence followed her everywhere. I didn't watch from anger. I watched like a technician observing a system fail exactly as predicted. Stability isn't loud, it's absence. And once it's gone, everyone notices the missing heartbeat. Her family tried to reach out. Her sister posted a photo of them from last Christmas, tagging her with a caption about checking in. That's how public concern looks now, digitized empathy. And then came the whisper that finished it. A former colleague asked her, half-jokingly, "So, was he funding you or dating you?" It wasn't an accusation, just a spark. But everyone in that office felt the pause. The kind of pause that rewrites how people look at you forever. I didn't have to say a word. I didn't have to reveal anything. The truth has its own gravity when lies start losing power. From my seat miles away, watching through the glow of my laptop screen, I realized she wasn't falling from grace. She was just being left without an audience. Isolation doesn't start with distance. It starts with realization. When she understood the investor wasn't calling back, she tried to rebuild the narrative. She posted motivational reels, started talking about self-growth, even went to Lowe's one weekend to repaint the apartment. A fresh start, she called it. She picked the same color she'd once shown me, some soft gray that was supposed to feel modern. But paint can't hide emptiness. You can still hear it in the echo of a room where conversation used to live. I saw the updates from a distance. Her smile and photos looked practiced now. She was learning to live inside her own silence, but not mastering it. I'd stopped being angry weeks ago. There's something liberating about no longer being needed, about existing outside the reach of someone who once believed they controlled the rhythm of your life. She must have realized I was still close. Not physically, but present enough that her mind filled in the blanks. The missed notifications, the unanswered emails, the rent she now had to handle on her own. All those invisible supports she never noticed until they were gone. I wasn't hiding. I just stopped responding. She reached out once, just a single text, no punctuation. "Where are you?" I read it, but didn't reply. There's power in restraint, in letting the message sit there, unread in spirit, even if opened in fact. At night, I drive the same route we used to take for groceries at Sam's Club, not out of nostalgia but clarity. She once said stability was boring. Maybe she was right. But what she never understood was that boredom is safer than collapse. And collapse was now her only company. She finally found me. Not in person, but through a mutual contact from the startup. He messaged me one night saying she'd been asking where I'd gone, if I was okay. I told him to tell her I was fine. Nothing more. A simple answer with no invitation. Control doesn't always look like dominance. Sometimes it's just a refusal to re-enter someone's chaos. A few days later, she showed up at the office parking lot. I saw her before she saw me, standing by her car, arms folded, pretending to look calm. I didn't get out of mine. The silence between us was louder than any argument we'd ever had. She was waiting for a version of me that didn't exist anymore. When I finally stepped out, she started to speak, but her voice cracked. She said she just wanted to understand what happened. That word, understand, sounded hollow. Understanding implies equality, and we'd stopped being equals long before I left. I didn't respond right away. She searched my face for anger, for softness, for anything familiar. I gave her nothing. She said she missed the way things used to be. I could have told her those things only existed because I kept them running, like a background service she never noticed until it failed. But I stayed quiet. Sometimes silence tells the truth better than any explanation. After a few minutes, she realized she wasn't getting what she came for. Her posture shifted, shoulders collapsing under the weight of her own performance. She whispered that she still loved me. I just nodded once. No sarcasm, no comfort, just acknowledgement. Then I turned, got back into the car, and drove away. The hardest goodbyes aren't loud. They're the ones you deliver with the engine running. When people lose control, it doesn't happen all at once. It unravels slowly, thread by thread, until they're left holding nothing but memory. That's what started to happen to her. The investor's firm suspended funding. Her startup froze operations, pending review. The friends who used to crowd her messages now left her on read. Reputation has a smell when it burns, quiet, metallic, irreversible. She tried to rebuild. A new logo, new pitch deck, new hope. But every email came back colder than the last. People remembered. They always do. Not the full story, just the tone. The hesitation before saying your name in a meeting. The awkward glance when your past walks into the room before you do. I never interfered. I didn't have to. I'd already played my part. The removal of stability. She once told me I made things too predictable. Now she understood the value of that predictability. the calm she mistook for dullness. Without it, she was in free fall. Sometimes, late at night, she'd send messages that weren't really meant for me. Half-written apologies, fragments of reflection. She'd delete them before hitting send, but I'd still see the notifications flicker on my screen for a second. The ghost of communication. The echo of what used to be connection. I imagined her in that apartment, the one she painted herself. The Lowe's gray walls catching the glow from the TV. Disney Plus still playing something light and happy, filling the air so she wouldn't hear her own breathing. Every frame, every laugh, bouncing off a space too quiet to handle. People think silence is peaceful. It's not. It's a mirror. And when she finally looked into it, she saw the truth. She wasn't missing me. She was missing the version of herself that only existed when I was there. Months passed before I saw her again. It was at a small networking event downtown, one of those places where ambition pretends to be casual. She looked different, smaller somehow, quieter. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from peace, but from exhaustion. When she saw me across the room, she froze. The crowd blurred, but her eyes didn't move. She wasn't sure if she should approach. She did anyway. She started talking like nothing had happened. About new projects, new beginnings. Her voice trembled just enough for me to notice. There was no investor now, no startup, just her trying to rebuild something that no longer existed. She mentioned the apartment too, said she finally finished painting it, that it feels lighter. I knew what she meant. Empty always feels lighter. I listened, calm and detached. When she paused, waiting for a reaction, I just said, "I'm glad you found what you needed." She looked at me like she didn't understand whether it was kindness or closure. Maybe it was both. We stood in silence, the kind that weighs more than words. She tried to smile, but couldn't hold it. She said softly, "I didn't know how far gone you were until you stopped answering." I nodded. There wasn't anything else to say. The distance between us wasn't physical anymore. It was structural. We were built on different foundations now. As I turned to leave, she asked if I'd ever come back. I stopped for a second, met her eyes, and said, "I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected." Then I walked away. Outside, the air was cool, clean. I got into the car and sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, no rush to move. Peace doesn't make noise. It just waits for you to notice it. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.